This episode is sponsored by Day by Day Book, a guided journal that helps you navigate the ups and downs of change while creating a life you love. For more information on the classic, recovery, or teen day book, go to livedaybyday.com.
I think women are still looking at, I don't know if I should take on the promotion. I don't know if I should start this business. I don't know if I can do it. And we don't. We stop ourselves from moving forward. And if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't be here able to share and be able to tell other women, you can, you can, you can. Look at those options.
Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. I bet if we were able to see a show of hands with our listeners, there would likely be a significant amount of self-proclaimed overachievers in the bunch. Whether we were born with that relentless drive or it's something we learned along the way, the internal pressure we put on ourselves to do can often feel relentless. In the early 2000s, following an ugly divorce, Dora Rankin was a single mom raising 2 baby girls while being the primary caretaker of her mother who had multiple sclerosis. With a determination to be self-sufficient, she began to climb the corporate banking ladder and was soon on the fast track to snagging the title of vice president. Her hard work and determination paid off, but she soon learned that this title would come at a price of 3 to 4 panic attacks a day. Then, in 2017, thinking she was walking into a boardroom to receive another accolade, she was let go. For 20 years, she had been a powerhouse in her career, and her worst fear had just become a reality. Who would she become without this identity? She soon decided to go back to school to get certified in empowering women's leadership at Cornell University, and from there began consulting women leaders while uncovering a broken system, lack of funding for women and minorities. Linking arms with a high-growth startup, she went on a 3-year mission to build a nationwide crowdfunding platform for small businesses to access capital. She is now a globally successful business coach who shares her wisdom, expertise, and overall zest for life with women to empower them to create their highest earning potential. Dora, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Hi, Noelle. Okay, I'm so glad that this is taped because that was such a beautiful bio. I'm going to just snag it and toss it on my LinkedIn.
Perfect. I love it. Well,
That
I
was
had to capture it all
beautiful.
because, Dora, you have so many facets to you. And that's why I'm excited to have this conversation because I feel like there's so many different layers here to sort of peel. And what I thought maybe we'd start with, you tell me, because if you want to go further back, but what I was thinking we would start with, I know you got a divorce. I don't know if that was the beginning of your corporate career or if that happened immediately after, but maybe walk us through that a little bit so that we can kind of see the beginnings of the corporate career after that change.
So I am 47 and I got divorced at 25. So who gets married and divorced by the time they're 25? That's me. But I had a finance degree. So I had 2 little kids. I had a 6-month-old at my hip and a 2-year-old at my knee. And I was newly divorced. And with that finance degree, what you do is you jump into the bank. So that's what I did. I jumped into the bank and I had a fabulous job for a 25-year-old starting out, right? I actually had my first job at the bank was while I was still in college, but I was really fortunate to have mentors along the way. And my very first mentor at the bank was a founder of a women's only bank that she founded in the 70s, which is just crazy. And so I was blessed with this mentor at 25 who said, let me show you the ropes. And before I turned 30, I was a senior vice president for a bank. And I didn't know that that was unheard of. I started my banking career in 1998, and so it was before the crash, so before 2008 when I found myself in that role. But honestly, I was so naive because I was in my 20s. I had no idea like how big of a deal that was. I was very siloed in that atmosphere. But that's how it started. The divorce just happened. It was I got married young and I got divorced young and I got sober young. So like that was the
Yes,
hiatus.
yes. So did you get sober in your early 20s?
I did. Yeah. I got sober when I got divorced. It kind of all happened at the same time.
That's taken on a lot, that's for sure. A divorce and getting sober, those are two pretty big deals.
I think what's interesting when you grow up, you become a product of your environment. I grew up in a household where my mom was a single mom. She was a director of nursing. She lived at the hospital. She worked immense hours, and that was her identity. Her identity was living at the hospital, but we become products of our environment, and my environment was watching this powerhouse mom take care of her children, and I just did the same thing. I can take care of my children. I watched my mom do it, so I can do it too. So I never had that feeling of I can't. I always had the
Yes.
feeling of I can. And I was really fortunate to have that role model all through my youth and growing up because when I did get placed into a situation like, okay, I'm going to figure this out, I knew I had options.
That's amazing. And I feel like you have to have a certain level of confidence. And it sounds like you being in this pretty high powered role by the time you're 30, that does sort of help to cultivate that. If you've got a sort of level of confidence in growing up, like you said, it's sort of that's what you watched, that's what was modeled to you. And then now you're at a fairly young age in a pretty big position. I can imagine that it helps to kind of continue with that feeling of like, I can do it. It's not a big deal.
I giggle a little bit when you say like the powerhouse and the confidence, and I giggle a little because I was a train wreck, a confident train wreck. I don't know if there's like such thing. I did not grow up as the powerhouse. I grew up watching a powerhouse. Like that was my mom. She was the powerhouse, but I grew up being an absolute train wreck. It was like steer clear of responsibility. Like I said, I got sober in my early 20s. But when I got sober and saw that, oh my gosh, like my mom taught me how to do anything. And so I felt like I could do anything. So I had a very high risk tolerance. And I was put into a situation where I had these daughters to take care of. I had a job that was high power or high pressure or whatever word you want to call it. And my mom, that powerhouse mom, she did. She got sick with multiple sclerosis and she moved in with me 6 months after I got sober. So I always say it looked like it was stark raving crazy in my household for a bit because I had these two little kids. I had this mom, I had this job, and that was my life for the next 10 to 15 years.
So how did you, and I know that you are a multitasker. I just know this about you already. How does one do that? How do you be the primary caregiver of your two children plus your mom who's sick and full-time job that's not a cushy, laid back, chill kind of job?
I always tell people it's like Nike. We just do it. And when you don't know anything else, you do just do it. And it goes back to that same sentence that I started with that I have options. And
Yeah.
I always looked at what are my options? What's the solution? How do I move forward? I'll tell you a quick story. I think it's relevant, especially for our listeners. And if there's young listeners and young women that are trying to figure it out right now, they're sitting in the corporate world, they're going through the divorce, they're trying to make decisions and looking at their options where they're saying to themselves, I'm stuck, I'm trapped. We hear that quite often. When I was in that situation and I was looking at my options, one of the first things that was presented to me was a promotion, like take the promotion. And when I looked at that promotion at an early age, I looked at that promotion and said, maybe I shouldn't take the promotion because I'm a single mom, because I have all of these extra responsibilities. Maybe I shouldn't take this promotion because I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. And so I think we still do that 20 years later. I think women are still looking at, I don't know if I should take on the promotion. I don't know if I should start this business. I don't know if I can do it. And we stop ourselves from moving forward. And if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't be here able to share and be able to tell other women, you can, you can, you can. Look at those options. And I think our society and our systems create the condition for us to look back to say, well, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just stay where I'm at.
Well, and what I find really interesting about that is that, and this podcast is a testament to it. The women that I speak to, I always go into a conversation thinking it's going to go one way, and then there's like 15 other layers that get revealed, right? Because we're incredibly dynamic people. Women can take on so much at once. It's almost, I mean, to our detriment in a lot of ways, right? Where we have such a large capacity, and yet in our minds, it always feels really limited. It's like we're these beings that can do so much, and we see it around us in the women that we know. But in our own heads, it's this, the limiting beliefs and the things that we were brought up with and the culture and all the things that play into that. But I've always found that to be a really interesting interplay where you've got what we actually do and can do, and we see it all the time. And yet in our minds, we're always kind of like, I don't know. I mean, can I? It's like, of course you can.
Now, don't get me wrong. All of those years, anybody that would listen to me complain, I would complain. I was like, let me complain to you. Listen to my problems, please. But here's the thing. Hindsight is truly a virtue. And when I was told that by a really wise woman many years ago, while I was complaining, saying, I don't want to do this anymore. Why do I got to do this? All this responsibility, make it go away. She looked at me and she said, you're going to know love like you've never known love before. What you're going through right now is your biggest blessing. Hindsight is a virtue. And at the time when she told me that, I was in the thick of it. I was in Act 2, as Brene Brown would say. I was in there. So I couldn't see it. It wasn't until Act 3. It wasn't until after my mom passed away. It wasn't until after I lost that job that I saw, oh, I get it. Like I had to go through all of those experiences so I could then show up and say, hey, woman founder, hey, entrepreneurs, guess what? Everything you're going through right now, you're supposed to be going through that.
Well, and we're going to get to that in a minute too, because I want to talk about the women that you work with and all of that. Talk a little bit about just that day, the day that you were let go from the bank, because that's like a critical shift that maybe you didn't see happening in the moment, right? Because we never do. It takes time for those things to ruminate.
Those are the memory burns, right? Those picture of those moments in your life where whether you want to remember them or not, they're memory burns. And, that memory burn, there's no resentments anymore, right? Like I've forgiven, but there's still that moment where I remember, I can see the boss sitting on the chair with his foot up, with the grin on his face, like ready to do it. And how many times I've had women share that same experience with me where they've gotten so angry with the deliverer, with that, no offense to who is listening, but that white man delivering that, I'm going to fire you today. When I lost my job that day, that moment, I felt like I lost all power. I felt like I lost all security. I felt like I lost all financial security. I felt like I was going to be, I feel. I feel like felt like I was going to be homeless. Like all these really intense feelings came into play. And at that moment, I remember it was really funny because I dropped my phone walking out of the boardroom. I just dropped it and it completely shattered. It totally broke. And I'll tell you what, that moment, instead of going home, I was in such like a, oh my God. Instead of going home, I drove straight to the Apple store
To replace the phone.
Right? It's a lifeline. Like you could break your phone. Doesn't matter what happens in your life. You just lose a job for 20 years. You're going to the Apple store to fix your phone. I actually teach it inside my class. I tell people, if you break your phone, like nothing is happening. You're going straight to the Apple store.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And I walk into the Apple store, and the poor little cute Apple Genius bar boy, he's like, I don't know what to do with this lady, but I'm going to hurry up and fix her phone because she's crying. She's acting manic. She's telling me she's going to be homeless. That was my memory burn of like knowing that that's what happened. And then the other parts that I really remember are the PTSD. So like when you have panic attacks on a daily basis for that long, and that's just part of your mental health, that how you get through your day. Defogging from that PTSD for the next 3 months, after I lost my job for the next 3 months, all I could do was paint. I had to turn off my brain. So I painted my entire house. And my daughters were teenagers at the time. My daughters were like, Mom, the house looks like a rainbow. You're painting rooms yellow and green and pink. I just kept painting. I didn't know what else to do with myself. So I just painted and painted and painted until one day I was like, okay, it's time for me to do something other than paint.
That's the kind of thing that you need that space and time to absorb what's going on. And sometimes it just needs to be dead air. As we all know, change is inevitable. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere, leaving us to pick up the pieces and navigate our way through the unknown. Other times it's a decision we've made to step into a bigger version of ourselves or find more joy or fulfillment in our lives. Day by Day book was designed to help you face the discomfort of those shifts in life that are pushing you to that next level of growth and learning. It's a guided journal with a simple tracking system to manage your daily well-being during challenging times, setting you up for success no matter what life throws your way. Join our community of over 15,000 changemakers and get started on your daybook journey today. The time is now to step into change to create a life you love. To get your Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com. Okay, so you thought you were going to be homeless, Dora. That is crazy to me. You were like so far from that in my mind.
Here's what happened. In the corporate trafficking world, I call it corporate trafficking because we become brainwashed. Not all of us. I have plenty of friends that work in the corporate structure and they have lovely, inclusive conditions. But I worked in a corporate trafficking environment where I was told what to do, what to say, how to say it, if I was going to be blackballed. I was groomed from the time I was 25. I was groomed. So I had to go through this process of letting go of that. But I also had to, I could have just went back. That's what I knew, going back to the abusive boyfriend or husband. That's what I knew, but I didn't go back. I was like, what am I going to do? So all of my sense of security, I thought that was gone because that was my security, or what I thought was my security. So that's why I said I'm going to be homeless, and was so irrational, because that was my security for so long. And I had to go find a new security, and I didn't know what that was going to look like. So that's where that homelessness came from.
I can tell you that I have had those moments in time in my head after I left corporate too. It's almost like you're leaving. I used to call it leaving the mothership. It's like you're leaving the mothership and now you're off on your own, flailing, trying to figure out and you're not flailing, but you think that you are because you're so used to the structure. And yet we don't realize that when we're in corporate, we could be let go tomorrow. There was never we have that false sense of security. But I like what you said, that going back to the abusive boyfriend, because I used to always say, it's like I had a boyfriend that took me out to really nice dinners and everything, but really wasn't that great to me.
Right.
It was like, it was a cush life, but it didn't feel fulfilling. So it's funny, but yes, you're right. And that takes time to deprogram, for sure.
That's so true. I would win cars and I would win trips to Aruba. They would just give me the world, but the price was so high.
So you paint the house. Your house looks fabulous, apparently, at this point.
Looks like a rainbow. Yeah.
So then what?
I had a conversation with my grandfather. He was alive at the time, and he went to Cornell. And I always wanted to go to Cornell because he went to Cornell, because he was the hierarchy of our family, and he was just a really amazing man. And, he used to say that he got me into Cornell, but I did. And he was so cute, though. And so that was honestly why I was like, I'm going to go to school. I wasn't even a school person. Like, I didn't like school. I wanted to figure out a way to empower women, and I didn't really know what to do. So I jumped into Cornell and I started studying empowering women's leadership, and I started just studying history and studying our brains and how big and beautiful we are, but how our brains are, but how big and beautiful our brains are trying to keep us so safe that we don't risk things. So as I was studying, I was connecting with a lot of the students inside Cornell that were entrepreneurs and in their business school and in an organization called Ventures for America, and just making a lot of connections. And at the time, I connected with a startup, and the startup, I immediately fell in love with this startup. And there were a couple of reasons why. I fell in love with it because of the mission. The mission was to get capital. Remember, I come from the bank. So it was to get capital into small businesses, primarily minority businesses, to get money into small businesses' hands so they could grow their business. And so I came from the bank. I came from the business banking world. It was a love affair. And so I jumped into a high growth fintech, financial tech startup with, I don't know, there was like two women in fintech at the time. It was 2017, before like the AI and before the tech really, really went up. And that's what I did. So I jumped in, and it was a complete white space. It was like, we have this. What do we do? And so I was like, oh boy, what are we going to do? So what we did is we just took everything that I had done for all those years at the bank, all that stuff that I did at the bank, and I plopped it over into this complete white space and said, here's what we're going to do. And my role at the startup was to figure out how to take this complex product that nobody knew anything about, crowdfunding at the time, nobody knew about it, and to activate it into the world. So that's what I did. And over a 3-year period, I spent a lot of time building out this startup. And in 2020, I was standing inside Money 2020, which is a big conference in Vegas filled with fintech. It was all fintech, all startup fintechs. And I was one of 3 women in the room of like 3,000. And I saw it, like it was just there. It was right in front of me. And it was like, wait a minute, I've just spent the last 3 years building this out, but I'm still not empowering women. What the heck? And so that's when I said, I'm leaving. And I love the company, but I exited and said, I got to go figure this out. And within a few days, I I exited the startup, and yeah, that's what happened.
Whoa, that's quite a calling. I mean, did it literally just hit you like that, where you were like, I need to be doing something bigger?
Yes, and I didn't look at it as like doing something bigger. It was, I'm very spiritually driven versus emotionally guided. So when I have an emotion, when something hits me, I look for clarity. And so how I found it, how I looked for clarity, was through conversation. I'm always looking for guidance, and I was guided. My sister, who I dearly love, and she said, Dora, why don't you take everything that you just did? It's wrapped around your pinky. You've got it right here. Why don't you go take it and actually give it to women entrepreneurs? Why don't you go find the women entrepreneurs that need what you have? And I said, well, that sounds like a good idea. Wonder how I go do that. And so I figured it out.
I love that. I did not realize that that's how you got into what you're doing, like that it was kind of like that was the springboard into it.
Yeah.
So you decided then you're going to start helping women entrepreneurs.
Noelle, you want to know something so funny? I didn't even know there was a coaching industry. I didn't know there was a whole coaching online industry. Had no idea. I just knew I wanted to help women and support women and help them figure out the roadmap on how they were going to grow their businesses. That's what I knew. And again, I just sought out guidance and met a woman that said, "You're a coach." And I was like, "I am." And she's like, "Yeah, what'd you do all your whole life?" And I was like, "Well, I was titled a coach at the bank." And she's like, "Yeah."
But just for listeners, because I don't think we filled this in, but when you were in the bank, you were in sales development. What do you call it?
I coached relationship managers to go out and build the bank. So I developed sales teams and businesses and build out businesses with those businesses. So basically do the same thing that I used to do,
Oh
only
my God.
I do it with women versus inside the corporate structure.
And you've been doing this now for how many years?
I kicked off in November of 2020, so it'll be 4 years in November that I've been riding solo.
And just so everybody knows, I was part of one of her programs that she's just put out. We're going to put all of your links in the show notes, by the way, Dora, just so people know. But you have something else coming up too that I want you to talk a little bit about, which is exciting. So you have a book coming out, right?
I know. How did that happen?
I love it. That's why I want you to talk about it because it sounds so, well, first of all, it sounds really, really good. I'm ready. I'm ready to read this book. Tell us a little bit about it and kind of how it came to be.
My mom taught me never to have a filter. And so I'm really excited because this book is my like no filter. And I don't want to get too emotional about it, but it taught me to shoot from the hip and to not beat around the bush and be really transparent. And so over the last 4 years, there's a lot of things that I've been seeing inside the industry of women building their businesses, of women entrepreneurs. And there's three things that really stand out. One thing that really stands out is that we have a high tech takeover. We are in this world of everything is online, and everything you do to build your business needs to be online. And it's false advertising. To build our businesses, it's not just online, it's a good marketing trend. Remember the days of infomercials and QVC? Those, you stay up late and you'd end up buying that thing, that shiny object, because it was so tempting at 2 in the morning while you were eating ice cream.
Yes.
That was 20 years ago. That was a trend. Well, 20 years later, we're in the same trend. It's online. So you see that same advertisement, you see that same thing online, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's juicy. I'm going to go buy it. But what's happening is women are failing at their business because they think this thing that they're buying online is going to grow their business. One of the things in this book is that we're going to bring back the real, this is how you build a business. You need a sales team and a marketing team. You need all these fundamentals to actually build your business. So that's one. The other piece that I'm seeing, and we all know this, is that we have a wealth gap to close, and it keeps getting bigger instead of smaller. And economic power for women is so vital for us to make decisions, for us to make impact. Money equals power. So in this book, it's teaching you how to create economic power and sustainability in your business. And then the third is the heart and the love. I do what I do every day in honor of my mom. So when my sister looks at me and says, "When you get on the Drew Barrymore show, and you get famous, can you please bring me?" And I'm like, "Marcy, it's not about me. It's about honoring my mom." And my mom loved really, really big. And so I bring that into everything that I do. And so inside this book, it's also to honor her and a memoir for her.
Oh, I love that part of it. I think that's going to be the part that I'm going to look for the most. That's wonderful too, because like you said, it sounds like she really guided you in so many ways that it's a tribute to her. And
Yeah.
I think that there is, and I will say this from the moment that I met you, Dora, and it's funny because, I am one of those people that shies away from sales and doesn't really understand it and doesn't quite grasp what it's all about. But talking with you even about the subject, immediately it struck me as how genuine you are. And I mean, you really truly are. You get what you see, right? you're a very genuine person. And I think that helps us women, right, who kind of think of things like building a business and all of those scary, we think of them as very scary things. It really helps to have somebody like you guide that process because you've been in the corporate world. You get that piece of it, right? So you bring all of that to the table, but you also then have the heart side of it, which we all are really good at, I think. I think we all can bring that more vulnerability being brought to the table every day helps us, does not hurt us. So I just think that you are so well matched for what you do. It's crazy.
Oh, thank you. Well, we have the heart, right? We have it.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at all of the things we don't have, like imposter syndrome, we're focusing so much on imposter syndrome versus what we do have. And we have solid emotions. We have the ability to connect in a way that men can't connect. And men don't have imposter syndrome, but we do. So imposter syndrome means that we're like scared. Oh my gosh, we're not good enough. All those things. Men don't have that. So, okay, we have it. Fine. We're scared. But we have more heart. So that's why we get to connect and we actually get to build real relationships where men, they don't care.
And you bring up an important thing that I want to ask you about because I know you talk a little bit about this. Mindset is a biggie. When you work with your clients, do you work a lot around mindset, right? Of like, not just, okay, what are we going to do and how are we going to do this, but how do we clear away all of those limiting beliefs that we all bring to the table to like have that level playing field again where we can start to build and not be wrapped up in the stories that we tell ourselves about the past and all those kinds of things.
At the start of the podcast, something that you mentioned was we're going to peel away the onion. There's all these different layers, right? And when it comes to mindset, mindset is the entire onion. Even when you peel all the things away from the onion, the mindset is still the onion. It's a constant practice. So when someone says to me, I'm just going to get rid of my scarcity mindset. Yeah, I'm just going to focus and not be scared anymore. I'm like, no. So strategy, all the things that I teach on how to build your business, all that fun, let's get into action, let's build your strategy, let's do the roadmap. It's only as good as the mindset that's leading it. So if your mindset is just not what, it's just crap, then the strategy is junk in, junk out. So yes, it's the entire onion.
Do you have any practices that you do when you are going through, it could be anything, any kind of challenge, any kind of change? Is there anything in particular that you go to?
My go-to for mindset is to understand what's happening in your big, beautiful brain. What are you saying to yourself that's trying to keep you safe? That's a false story.
I love that, the safety thing, because it's so true. So true.
I use plenty of methods and modalities to walk through mindset with women. And at the end of the day, we want to have a good coach wants you to transform and wants you to have breakthroughs. So whatever I can do to get you to either want to cry or vomit is on my agenda.
Those are great goals. Oh my gosh. Well, Dora, it is such a pleasure to talk to you. I could do this for a lot longer. I want to be very cognizant, obviously, of your time. Tell us the name of the book and when it's coming out and all of that, so we know to keep an eye open for it.
Yeah, well, surprisingly, the name of the book is The Heart Cell. The Heart Cell.
Love it. And when's it coming out?
When is it coming out? For sure by the end of this year. So 2024, pre-order hopefully by summer with the book completely published by fall.
Love it. Dora, thank you for being our guest. You've been very special and I love talking to you. So we're going to continue the conversation after this, but I'm of course going to be staying close with you for a lot of different reasons.
Thank you, Noelle. This was lovely.
That's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.